Some stories stay with you forever. Here's one of them. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave a comment and let us know where you're watching from. She was just an ordinary housekeeper, but when she saw two 5-year-old boys stumbling in their own home, she uncovered something that changed everything. What she did next revealed secrets no one was prepared to hear. I've already spent 3 million Rs on you, and my children are still bumping into walls. Alexander Almeida screamed at Dr. Albuquerque, pounding the table in the luxurious office. 5 years of the same conversation. The doctor remained unfazed. He adjusted his expensive glasses with that annoying calm of a man used to desperate parents. Mr. Almeida, complete congenital blindness is irreversible. I've already explained this. Irreversible? Alexander stood up from his chair, furious. Then why do you keep billing me? Why don't you just say it? I'm sorry, there's nothing more we can do. Stop spending money, he said, because medical follow-up is essential. Follow-up for what? To watch them continue to be the same. Dr. Albuquerque sighed as if dealing with a petulant child. Mr. Almeida, children with severe visual impairment require constant monitoring. What a nice word. Alexander began to pace the room. 5 years of monitoring and my children are getting worse. Worse? What do you mean? Worse. Before, at least they tried to walk around the house. Now, they're glued to their beds, afraid of everything. It's natural for them to develop more cautious behaviors. Cautious? Doctor, they're 5 years old and they don't leave their room. They sit all day without playing, without doing anything. Is that normal? Dr. Albuquerque adjusted himself in his chair. Every child reacts to blindness differently. Every child? Do the other blind children you treat also act like this? Do they also live in fear of moving? Mr. Almeida, I suggest you seek psychological support. Dealing with disabled children can be very draining for parents. Psychological support. Doctor, my children don't need a psychologist. They need doctors who know what they're doing. Mr. Almeida, children with congenital blindness can lead normal lives, but each case has its peculiarities. Peculiarities. What a nice word for saying you don't know what to do. Perhaps they need more time to adapt. 5 years isn't enough time. Alexander stormed out, slamming the door so hard that the secretary in the hallway was startled. In the elevator he called home, trembling with rage. Marina, how are the boys? Same as ever, Alexander, his sister's tired voice answered. In the room. All quiet. They didn't want to come out for lunch. They asked for their food to be brought to their room. Again. They're afraid to eat in the dining room. They say they might spill something and make a mess. Alexander felt that familiar tightness in his chest. Marina, 5-year-olds don't have those kinds of worries. I know, but they do, and the new nanny quit, the 16th one. What excuse did she give? The same as always, that they're strange. How? Marina hesitated. Alexander, I don't know how to explain it, but sometimes it seems like they know things blind children shouldn't know. What kinds of things? Yesterday, Samuel said, Marina, why are you sad? I hadn't said anything. I hadn't cried near him. How did he know? Alexander nearly lost control of the car. How did he know you were sad? I don't know. I asked him and he got all frantic, crying, saying he didn't know anything. It's very strange. And there's more. On Thursday, Raphael said, it's very windy outside. The windows were closed, Alexander. How did he know it was windy? Maybe he heard the noise. What noise? The house is soundproof. Alexander drove faster, more and more intrigued. Marina, do they say things like that often? They do, but when we ask how they know, they get terrified. They start crying and saying they don't know anything. Terrified of what? I don't know. It's like they're afraid of having said something wrong. Afraid of whom? That's the question I can't answer. Alexander arrived home more confused than when he left. The mansion was silent, as always. In the entrance hall, he could hear the muffled sound of something hitting upstairs. What's that noise? He asked Marina. Samuel trying to go to the bathroom alone. He bumps into the wall every time. Why doesn't he ask for help? Because he's embarrassed. He says big boys have to pee by themselves. Alexander ran up the stairs and found Samuel in the hallway, leaning against the wall, crying quietly. "Samuel, what happened, son?" "Daddy!" The boy clung to him, sobbing. "I got lost." "Where were you going?" "To the bathroom, but I couldn't find the door." Alexander looked around. The bathroom was just 2 meters from Samuel's room. The door was open and clearly visible. "Son, the door's right here." It is. Come, I'll take you." While taking Samuel to the bathroom, Alexander noticed something strange. The boy wasn't walking with his hands stretched out, as blind people do. He was walking as if he were trying not to touch anything. "Samuel, why don't you stretch out your hands to guide yourself?" "Because I'm afraid of what?" "Of touching something wrong." "Son, there's no such thing as wrong to touch. This is your home." Samuel remained quiet, clearly not knowing how to explain. After leaving Samuel in the bathroom, Alexander went to Raphael's room. The boy was sitting on his bed, nervously fidgeting with a teddy bear. "Raphael, how are you?" "Fine, Daddy." "Why didn't you come down for lunch?" Because I didn't want to." "But you like eating in the dining room?" Raphael lowered his head. "I don't like it anymore." "Why not?" "Because it's different downstairs." "Different how?" Raphael was silent for a long time. "Daddy, can I ask you something?" "You can." "Why don't you spend more time with us?" The question caught Alexander by surprise. "Son, Daddy works so he can take care of you. But Daddy gets sad when he's with us." "Why do you think that?" Because I feel it." "You feel it how?" Raphael curled up on the bed. "I don't know how to explain it, Daddy, I just feel it." Alexander sat on the bed next to his son. "Raphael, Daddy isn't sad to be with you. Daddy is sad because he wants you to be happy. But we are happy, Daddy." "Are you really? Without leaving the room, without playing, without doing anything?" Raphael hesitated. We're afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Of doing something wrong." It was the second time he'd heard that. "Sons, what could you possibly do wrong?" "I don't know, Daddy, but if we do, everyone will get mad." "Who is everyone?" "The doctors, the nannies, you." Alexander felt a lump in his throat. "Would never be mad at you for anything you do, Daddy." "Ever." "Promise?" "I promise." Samuel returned from the bathroom, walking slowly and glued to the wall. "Samuel, come here, son." The boy approached, still nervous. "Boys, Daddy wants to do a test with you." The two immediately tensed up. "What kind of test?" Samuel asked. "A simple test. I want you to tell me if you can tell when I'm moving around the house." "Daddy, we can't see!" Raphael exclaimed quickly. "I know you can't see, son, but maybe you can hear my steps or feel something different." The two exchanged a quick glance, which Alexander found strange for children who supposedly couldn't see each other. "We can't, Daddy," Samuel said. "We don't notice anything." "Are you sure?" "Sure." The two answered together too quickly. Alexander observed his sons. They were clearly lying about something, but lying about what? "Hey, boys, I'm not going to do any test." The two visibly relaxed. "Daddy," Raphael said quietly, "can we keep staying in the room? Why don't you want to come out?" "Because we feel safe here." "Safe from what?" Samuel and Raphael hugged each other without answering. "Marina!" Alexander shouted. "What is it?" she replied from the hallway. "Call the employment agency. I need someone here tomorrow morning." Another specialized nanny. Alexander looked at his children, who were watching him with an attention he couldn't decipher. "No, a housekeeper, someone simple who knows nothing about blind children." "Why?" "Because maybe an outsider can see something we're missing." "What kind of something?" Alexander looked again at Samuel and Raphael. There was something about their behavior that didn't add up, something he couldn't identify, but it was there. "I don't know yet. But I'm sure there's something important going on here that no one is noticing. Daddy? Samuel tugged at his sleeve. Why do you want a housekeeper? To clean the house, son. The house is already clean. Alexander paused. It was true. Then to observe what? Raphael asked with fear in his voice. Observe, you sons, to understand why two 5-year-old children live with so much fear. The boys fell silent, clearly apprehensive. That night, Alexander stayed awake, thinking. His sons were hiding something. They were afraid of doing something wrong. They knew things they shouldn't know. And all the nannies left saying they were strange. In a few hours, a housekeeper would enter that house, and Alexander had a feeling that this decision would change everything. Daniela Alves arrived at the mansion at 7 a.m. sharp, as she had arranged with the agency. 42 years old, with black hair pulled into a simple ponytail, clean but clearly cheap clothes, she had the determination of someone who needed the job and the wariness of someone who had worked in complicated homes. "Are you Daniela?" Marina asked, opening the service door. "Yes, I am. I'm here for the housekeeping position. Come in, please." "My brother wants to speak with you first." Daniela followed Marina through the mansion's corridors, observing everything carefully. 20 years of working as a domestic had taught her to read a family through the details. And in that house, there were strange signs everywhere. The silence was too heavy for a house with children. The stairs had thick carpet, as if someone wanted to muffle any noise. And in the second-floor hallway, all the doors were closed, except for one, from which a low whisper came. "Alexandra," Marina called, knocking on the office door. "The housekeeper is here." "Send her in," came the reply from inside. Daniela entered and found Alexander sitting behind a huge desk with deep, dark circles under his eyes and a pile of medical papers in front of him. He looked like a man who hadn't slept properly in years. "Daniela, right?" "That's right, sir." "Sit down. I want to explain the situation." Daniela found this strange. Normally, rich bosses didn't explain anything to housekeepers. They just showed them where the cleaning supplies were. "Sir, can I ask you something first?" "You can." "Why do you want a housekeeper if the house is already clean?" Alexander paused as if the question had taken him by surprise. "How do you know the house is clean?" "Because I walked through the rooms on my way here. Everything is spotless, so it's not cleanliness you want." For the first time, Alexander looked at her with interest. "You're observant." "I have to be. It's part of the job." "Daniela, I'll be direct. I have two 5-year-old twin sons, Samuel and Raphael. They have vision problems. They're completely blind. At least, that's what all the doctors say." Daniela frowned. "You don't believe the doctors?" "I don't know what to believe anymore. I've spent 3 million rays in 5 years, and my children are only getting worse." "Worse how?" Alexander got up and began to pace the room. "Daniela, my children live locked in their room. They're afraid to go out. Afraid to play, afraid of everything. Is that normal for a blind child?" "It shouldn't be. But 16 specialized nannies have quit. They all left saying my children are strange." "Strange how?" "That's the problem. No one can explain it properly. They just say there's something wrong." Daniela leaned forward. "And you want me to find out what?" "I want you to look at them without prejudice, without technical knowledge about blindness, without medical theories. Just look and tell me what you see. And how much are you paying for that?" 2,000 rays a week. Daniela almost fell out of her chair. It was more than she earned in 2 months at her other jobs. "Sir, why so much money?" Alexander stopped pacing and looked her in the eyes. "Because if you find out what's going on with my children, it will be worth every cent. Can I see them?" "You can. But Daniela, don't talk to them about blindness or disability. They get nervous when that topic comes up." They went up to the second floor together. In the hallway, Alexander stopped in front of the half-open door. They're in there. They usually stay in their room until someone comes to get them. All Daniela pushed the door open slowly. The room was large, with 2 cribs converted into beds, expensive toys on the shelves, and thick curtains that blocked out almost all the light. Samuel and Raphael were sitting on their beds, talking in whispers. When they saw the door open, they stopped talking, immediately, and tensed up. "Good morning, boys," Alexander said. "This is Daniela. She's going to work here at home." "Hi," the two said together, but they were clearly uncomfortable. Daniela observed the children carefully. There was something about their behavior that intrigued her. It wasn't the typical behavior of the blind children she had known. "Can I come into your room?" she asked softly. Samuel and Raphael exchanged a quick glance, very quickly. "You can," Samuel replied, but he remained tense. Daniela entered and approached slowly. "You have a nice room." "Thanks," Raphael mumbled. "Do you like to stay here?" "We like it." The two answered together, but it didn't sound true. "Why didn't you come down for breakfast?" "Because," Samuel hesitated, looking at Raphael. "Because we prefer to stay here," Raphael finished. Daniela sat on the floor between the 2 beds. "Can I ask you something?" The boys grew nervous. "How do you know when someone is coming into the room?" The question caught them off guard. They were silent, clearly not knowing how to answer. We hear the footsteps," Samuel finally said, "but I had come up without shoes. I hadn't made any noise. The panic in their eyes was instantaneous." "We heard it anyway," Raphael said quickly. "We have very good hearing." "I understand," Daniela said calmly, but continued to observe. "And tell me something. How do you know the difference between day and night?" "The birds sing in the morning," Samuel answered, too quickly. "And at night it gets quieter," Raphael added. Daniela nodded, but noticed that the room's curtains completely blocked out the outside light. How would they know if it was light or dark outside? "Boys, can you show me your toys?" "We don't like to play," Samuel said. "Why not?" "Because we might break something." "And then Daddy gets mad?" "No," Raphael said quickly. "Daddy never gets mad." "But—" The two fell silent, clearly torn between wanting to speak and being afraid of something. "But other people might get mad," Samuel murmured. "What other people?" Daniela felt something strange in the air. "The doctors get mad if you play?" "They do if we do something wrong," Raphael said quietly. "What kind of wrong thing?" Samuel started to cry. "We can't talk about it." "Why can't you talk about it?" "Because if we tell, they'll find out we're useless." The phrase came out in desperation, and Raphael immediately covered his brother's mouth. "Samuel, you can't say that," he whispered. Alexander, who was watching from the doorway, approached. "Sons, why do you think you're useless?" The two hugged each other, crying. "Daddy, we didn't want to do anything wrong," Samuel sobbed. "You never did anything wrong." "Why do you think that?" Because sometimes we know things we shouldn't know," Raphael cried. Daniela and Alexander exchanged glances. They were finally getting close to the truth. "What kinds of things do you know?" Daniela asked, gently. "We can't say," Samuel said nervously. "The doctors don't like it when we say certain things." "What kind of things don't the doctors like?" Alexander asked, kneeling in front of them. The boys looked at each other hesitantly. "Sometimes we notice different things," Raphael whispered. "But Dr. Albuquerque said it's better not to mention it." "Why is it better not to mention it?" Daniela asked. "Because it might confuse the diagnosis," Samuel repeated, as if he were reciting something he had memorized. Alexander hugged his 2 sons, trembling with emotion. "Sons, that's a lie. Daddy loves you just the way you are. If you can see even a little, Daddy will be happy." "Really?" Raphael asked. "Really? Very happy." Daniela watched the scene, putting the pieces of the puzzle together. The children had some visual perception: light, shadows, large shapes, and someone had taught them to hide it. "Boys," she said calmly, "do you want to do a test with me?" "What kind of test?" Samuel asked, still hesitant. "A test to see what you can really perceive without anyone getting mad." The two looked at their father for approval. "You can do the test," Alexander said, "and you can say everything you can see or feel." Daniela stood up and walked to the window. "Can I open the curtain just a little bit?" "You can!" the two shouted together, for the first time excited. When Daniela opened the curtain a few centimeters, letting in a shaft of sunlight, the boys smiled. It was the first true smile Alexander had seen on their faces in years. "Now it's less dark," Raphael exclaimed. "I see Daniela near the window," Samuel completed. Daniela moved her hand slowly in front of the light. "Something is moving," Raphael said excitedly. "It's Daniela's hand," Samuel finished. Alexander was crying. His sons could see, not much, but they could, and for 5 years they had been taught to hide it. "Daniela," he said, his voice choked, "you just discovered in 20 minutes what 50 doctors didn't discover in 5 years. "I didn't discover it, Mr. Almeida," she replied, still observing the boys interacting with the light. "They always knew. They were just afraid to tell." "Afraid of what?" "Afraid of losing their father's love." Alexander looked at Samuel and Raphael, who were playing with the shadows the light created on the wall, laughing and having fun for the first time in years. "Daniela," he said, "what do you think we can do to help them?" She smiled, seeing the joy on the children's faces. "First, let's let them be children again. Then we'll find out how much they can really see. And the doctors can wait. Now it's time to take care of what really matters. Give these boys their childhood back." Outside, the sun was shining brightly, and for the first time in 5 years, its light entered the Almeida twins' room. And with it, hope also entered. "Marina, bring a flashlight up here," Daniela shouted from the twins' room the next morning. A flashlight for what?" Marina replied from downstairs. "Just bring it." Alexander, who was in the office working, heard the commotion and went up to see what was happening. He found Daniela sitting on the floor with Samuel and Raphael, who for the first time in years seemed excited. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Testing," Daniela replied, taking the flashlight Marina brought. "Boys, look over here." She turned on the flashlight and pointed it at the wall. Samuel and Raphael immediately turned toward the light. "We see it!" Raphael shouted, clapping his hands. "I saw the light!" "Me too," Samuel exclaimed. "It's round and shiny." Alexander was dumbfounded. "How do you know it's round?" "Because we see the shape," Samuel answered excitedly. "When Daniela moves the flashlight, the light moves with it." "My God," Alexander murmured. Daniela moved the flashlight slowly across the wall. The two boys followed the movement with their eyes, laughing every time the light changed direction. "Now, I'm going to draw some things with the light on the wall," Daniela said. "You tell me what you can see." She began to draw simple shapes, a circle, a square, a triangle. "It's a circle," Raphael shouted when she made the first shape. "Now it's something with points," Samuel said when she made the triangle. Alexander sat down heavily on the bed, in shock. "They can distinguish shapes." "They can," Daniela confirmed. "And much more than we imagine." "Daniela, stop," Alexander said suddenly. Everyone was silent, surprised. "Why, Mr. Almeida?" "Because if they can see all of that, it means all the doctors lied to me for 5 years. The anger in his voice scared the boys. "Is Daddy mad?" Samuel asked, starting to cry. "I'm not mad at you, sons. I'm mad at the doctors who lied." "The doctors lied?" Raphael asked, confused. "They did. They said you were completely blind, but you can see." "But Daddy?" Samuel said, crying. "Dr. Albuquerque said that if we told him we could see anything, you would find out he didn't know how to treat us right, and then you would stop paying him," Raphael finished. "And then he would be out of work because of us." Alexander felt a rage he had never felt in his life. Sons, this doctor is using you to make money. What do you mean, Daddy? He lies about you being blind, so I keep paying for the treatment. Daniela put a hand on Alexander's arm. Mr. Almeida, calm down. The children are getting scared. She was right. Samuel and Raphael were, clinging to each other, terrified by the shouting. I'm sorry, boys. Daddy isn't mad at you. Mr. Almeida, Daniela said, can I keep testing what they can see, but calmly? You can. Just let me know if you find anything else that proves those doctors are liars. Over the next 2 hours, Daniela performed simple tests with the boys. She discovered that they could perceive not only light and shadow, but also movement, large shapes, and even some colors in well-lit environments. Samuel, what color is this? She asked, showing a red paper right in front of the open window. Red, he replied without hesitation. And this one? She showed a blue paper. Blue. Raphael, how many fingers am I showing? She asked, placing her hand very close to his face, with plenty of light. 3. And now, 5. Alexander was astonished. They can see colors, shapes, numbers. They can do much more than any doctor said they could, Daniela confirmed. Mr. Almeida, your children aren't blind. They have low vision. What's the difference? Low vision means that with the right stimulation, proper lighting and exercises, they can develop their visual capacity much more. Develop how? With simple exercises, games with lights, colors, shapes. Things any mother does with a small baby. Alexander stood up abruptly. You mean if I had done simple exercises at home, my children would be seeing better today? Probably. And they can still improve a lot. 5 years, Alexander shouted, punching the wall. 5 years lost because I trusted lying doctors. The boys were startled again. Daddy, did we do something wrong? Samuel asked, crying. No, son, you did nothing wrong. The doctors did. Daniela knelt in front of the children. Boys, listen carefully. You never did anything wrong. What you can see is wonderful. Can we keep seeing? Raphael asked. You can and you must. And we're going to do exercises so you can see better and better. Exercises like what? Samuel asked, excited. Playing with colors, games with lights, walks in the sun. In the sun? The two asked together, incredulous. In the sun. Sunlight is the best exercise for people with low vision. Alexander watched the transformation of his son. In 2 hours with Daniela, they had become more animated and hopeful than in 5 years of medical treatment. Daniela, he said, I need to ask you something. Of course. Do you think other doctors knew my children had this visual perception? I think so. This kind of response to light stimuli is easy to detect in exams, so they weren't honest about the diagnosis. They weren't. But now the important thing is to help Samuel and Raphael develop their full visual potential. Alexandra stood up, determined. Marina! What now? She shouted from downstairs. Call my lawyer. I need to clarify some issues about the medical diagnoses. Daddy! Samuel tugged at his pants. The doctors will be upset if they find out we talked about being able to see. A little. Son, the doctors will have to explain why they didn't detect this before, but you didn't do anything wrong. And can we keep talking about what we can see? Raphael asked. You can, and you should. It's very important that you tell me everything you notice. The two boys smiled, so we don't have to hide anymore. You never have to hide anything again, sons. Never again. Daniela watched the scene with emotion. In 2 days, she had witnessed the most important discovery in that family's life. Mr. Almeida, she said, can I make a suggestion? You always can. Before you go after the doctors, how about we let the boys enjoy a few days of freedom? Let them discover what they can see in the garden, in the whole house. That's a good idea. It's the best idea. They spent 5 years locked up. They deserve to know their own home. Boys! Alexander turned to his sons. Do you want to get to know the whole house? We do! The two shouted together. You can leave the room! Whenever you want. You can go wherever you want. You can play with whatever you want. Samuel started crying with joy. Daddy, can we go outside to see the sun? You can see the sun, the trees, the birds, everything. And we don't have to pretend we can't see anything anymore? Raphael asked. You never have to pretend again. Daniela smiled, seeing the happiness on the children's faces, but she knew there was still a lot of work ahead. 5 years of lost development couldn't be recovered in a few days. Mr. Almeida, she said, can I be responsible for the boys' visual exercises? You can. But Daniela, you don't have a medical background. I don't need one. I have something better. Common sense and experience with children who haven't been influenced by complicated medical theories. What do you intend to do? Simple exercises, play with colors, lights, shapes. Let them explore the world little by little at their own pace. Alexander nodded. And as for the doctors, let's leave. End them for later. Now the important thing is to get these boys' childhood back. Samuel tugged at Daniela's hand. Daniela, are you going to teach us to see better? I'm going to teach you to use what you can already see. And maybe you'll be able to see more and more things. Like other children? Raphael asked hopefully. We'll find out together. That afternoon, Samuel and Raphael went down to the living room for the first time in months. They went down the stairs holding Daniela's hand, amazed. By every shadow, every reflection of light, every new shape, they could perceive better. Daddy! Samuel shouted from the living room. I see the big table, and I see the stairs, Raphael completed. Alexander watched from the door, emotional. In one day, Daniela had given his sons their lives back, but he knew that the war against the lying doctors was just beginning. A week after dismissing Dr. Albuquerque, the doctor arrived for his monthly home visit, as he always did. But this time, Alexander was waiting. Doctor, it's good you're here, Alexander said, opening the door with a fake smile. I need to show you something interesting. Dr. Albuquerque entered with his expensive leather briefcase, exuding that arrogance of a doctor used to desperate families. How are Samuel and Raphael today? They're great. In fact, they're better than they have been in 5 years. Better? What do you mean better, Mr. Almeida? Children with cortical blindness don't show spontaneous improvement. Not spontaneous, but when they receive adequate stimulation, they do. Dr. Albuquerque frowned. Adequate stimulation, sir. I hope you haven't exposed the children to unauthorized procedures. Come and see, Alexander said, going up the stairs. In the twins' room, Daniela was playing with the boys, using a colored flashlight. Samuel and Raphael were laughing, following the movements of the light on the wall, trying to touch the shapes it projected. What's going on here? Dr. Albuquerque asked, visibly uncomfortable. My children are playing, Doctor. It's the first time in months they've left their beds voluntarily. Mr. Almeida, children with total blindness should not be exposed to unnecessary light stimuli. This can cause neurological confusion. Confusion? Daniela stood up, facing the doctor. Doctor, these children are responding perfectly to the stimuli. For the first time in years, they're happy. Who are you, and what is your medical background? Daniela Alves. And I don't have a medical background. I have common sense. Common sense doesn't qualify anyone to treat complex neurological cases. Treat? Doctor, I'm just playing with them. And I discovered in 1 week what you didn't discover in 5 years. Dr. Albuquerque adjusted himself, clearly uncomfortable. And what exactly do you think you discovered? That these children can see. That's impossible. The neurological exams clearly show the absence of visual processing. Is that so, Samuel? Show the doctor what you can do. Samuel picked up the flashlight from the floor and pointed it at the wall. Look, Dr. Albuquerque, I can see the light moving and I can draw. The boy began to move the flashlight, drawing circles and lines on the wall. Dr. Albuquerque turned pale. This is just involuntary motor reflex. Reflex? Daniela laughed. Raphael, tell the doctor what colors you identified yesterday in the garden. I saw the green of the plants, the blue of the sky, and the yellow of the flowers in the flower bed, Raphael said proudly, and I saw the red of the neighbor's house. And can you tell me what clothes I'm wearing today? Daniela asked. A blue blouse and black pants, Raphael replied without hesitation. Dr. Albuquerque began to sweat visibly. Mr. Almeida, these are children's fantasies. Blind children often invent that they can see colors. Invent? Alexander approached the doctor with a serious look. Doctor, my son's just identified specific colors of real objects. Is that invention? It's suggestion. Someone is inducing false answers in them through inadequate techniques. Inadequate techniques, like using a flashlight without proper medical supervision. This can harm neurological development. Daniela took a step forward. Doctor, harm how? By making them happy for the first time in years. Temporary happiness based on false hope is cruel to families. False hope? Alexander exploded. Doctor, my children are seeing. It's right here in front of me. How is this false hope? Because it will create unrealistic expectations about full recovery. Who said anything about full recovery? I just want my children to use the vision they have. Dr. Albuquerque opened his briefcase nervously. Mr. Almeida, I strongly suggest that we stop these experiments. They can cause regression in the condition. Regression? They've improved more in 1 week than in 5 years with you. They improved in subjective perception. But objectively what, Samuel? How many fingers is Dr. Albuquerque showing? Dr. Albuquerque raised his hand involuntarily. 3, Samuel answered immediately. Raphael, is the doctor near the door or near the window? Near the door, and he's nervous. Dr. Albuquerque lowered his hand quickly, clearly in a panic. How did they do that? He murmured. They did it because they can see, Alexander shouted. Something any competent doctor would have noticed. That's impossible. The reports I signed clearly show. The reports you signed are wrong, or you lied in them. Dr. Albuquerque was silent, sweating even more. Daniela approached him. Doctor, can I ask you a question? What? In 5 years of treating these children, did you ever test if they could perceive bright light? I did, but they always denied seeing anything. And you believed 2, 3, 4-year-old children denying obvious visual stimuli. They were too young to lie about something like that. They were too lie, Daniela agreed. But weren't they too young to be instructed on what to say? Dr. Albuquerque swallowed hard. I don't know what you're insinuating. I'm insinuating that someone taught these children to deny any visual perception during the exams. That's a very serious accusation. It's an observation. Samuel, did Dr. Albuquerque ever tell you not to talk about being able to see light? The boy looked at his father for encouragement. You can speak, son, Alexander said. He always said that if I talked about being able to see anything, it would confuse the diagnosis, Samuel replied. And that a confused diagnosis was bad for Daddy. Why was it bad for Daddy? Daniela asked. Because then Daddy would spend money on the wrong treatment, Raphael completed. And Dr. Albuquerque said that rich daddies don't like to spend money for nothing. Dr. Albuquerque was getting paler and paler. The children misinterpreted my instructions. Misinterpreted? Alexander approached the doctor. Doctor, my 5-year-old sons understood perfectly. You instructed them to lie about their own vision. I instructed them to be precise in their reports. Precise how? By denying that they can see when they can. Mr. Almeida, I think it's better to postpone this discussion. Dr. Albuquerque headed for the door, but Alexander blocked his way. Doctor, before you leave, I want to clarify one doubt. What doubt? How many other doctors knew my children weren't completely blind? and can't speak for other professionals. You can't or you won't, because if I find out it was a combined scheme, it wasn't a scheme at all. It was just diagnostic caution. Diagnostic caution that cost me 3 million reais and 5 years of my children's childhood. Dr. Albuquerque tried to pass by Alexander. Sir, I need to go. I'll review the case and... You won't review anything because I don't want to see you near my family again. Mr. Almeida, this is a mistake. Interrupting. Established treatment can cause what? My children to be happier, to see better. It can cause false expectations that will lead to frustration. Daniela interrupted. Doctor, frustration is what these children felt for 5 years, thinking they were completely useless. Now they're discovering they can do normal things. Normal within their limitations. Dr. Albuquerque tried to argue. What limitations, doctor? Because so far they've surprised me with every test. Dr. Albuquerque closed his briefcase for good. Mr. Almeida, when this euphoria passes and reality sets in, I'll be available to resume the proper treatment. The reality, doctor, is that you lied to my family for 5 years. And now I'm going to find out why. After the doctor left, Alexander stayed in the room with Daniela, still processing everything. Daniela, he said. He was clearly lying, wasn't he? He was. And he was afraid we would find out something more. But what? I don't know. Yet. But his reaction when the boys showed they could see was pure panic. Alexander sat on the couch. What do we do now? Now we find a real doctor, someone who has never heard of the case, who can give an impartial opinion. And if they confirm that they can really see much more, then we'll work to develop their visual capacity to the fullest. And the doctors who lied? Daniela smiled. Then, Mr. Almeida, we'll make them pay for every year stolen from these children's childhood. Samuel ran down the stairs. Daddy! Daniela, come and see! What is it, son? Raphael discovered he can see the colors of the toys. They ran upstairs. Raphael was in the room, organizing toys by color on the floor with the utmost concentration. Look, Daddy, the red cars go here, the blue ones here, and the yellow ones here. Alexander knelt beside his son, emotional. Raphael, can you see all that? I can, when there's a lot of light and when I concentrate hard. Mr. Almeida, Daniela said quietly. In 5 years, did any doctor test if they could organize objects by color? Never. They always said it was impossible. Then they never really examined these children properly. Alexander hugged his 2 sons, who were radiant with their discovery. Sons, tomorrow we're going to see a new doctor, a doctor who will be happy to see everything you can do. She won't be mad if we can see colors? Samuel asked. She'll be proud, very proud. That night, for the first time in 5 years, Samuel and Raphael had dinner in the dining room, talking animatedly about all the things they had discovered they could see during the day. And Alexander, watching Daniela interact with his sons with affection, felt his heart beat differently. She hadn't just discovered that the boys could see. She had given life back to the entire family. 2 days after dismissing Dr. Albuquerque, Alexander was in the office of Dr. Lucia Soares at the clinic's hospital, with Samuel and Raphael by his side. The doctor, a 50-year-old woman with graying hair and a kind expression, observed the boys carefully. Mr. Almeida, Dr. Henrique told me about the situation. Can I see the previous exam? Alexander handed her a thick folder with 5 years of medical reports. Doctor, I want a completely independent opinion. That's exactly what I'll give you, she said, beginning to leaf through the document. As she read, her expression grew more and more intrigued. Mr. Almeida, can I ask you some questions about the boys' behavior at home? Do they show any reaction to changes in lighting? They do. A week ago, we discovered that they get more animated when there's a lot of light in the environment, and they can move around the house without bumping into furniture. Can they, as long as they know the environment? They can. Dr. Lucia wrote something in the chart. And do they respond when they're called from a distance? They do, and they can identify who's calling. And boys, she said, addressing Samuel and Raphael, can you sit here in front so I can examine you? The two approached, much more relaxed than in previous consultations. Don't be afraid, Dr. Lucia said softly. I'm just going to check your eyes. She started with basic light tests, turning on a small flashlight and observing the boy's pupil reaction. Interesting, she murmured. The pupils respond normally to light. Is that a good sign? Alexander asked. It's an excellent sign. It means that the basic structure of the eyes is working. She continued with more complex tests, placing colored cards at different distances and asking the boys to identify them. Samuel, what color is this card? Red. And this one, Raphael? Blue. And can you see how many cards I'm holding? 2. The two answered together. Dr. Lucia moved back a few meters. And now, can you see what I'm doing? You're moving your hand, Samuel said. You're smiling, Raphael completed. The doctor sat down again with a serious expression. Mr. Almeida, I need to be direct with you. Please, your children are not blind. The silence in the office was total. What do you mean they're not blind? They have moderate low vision. With the right stimulation, proper lighting and visual exercises, they can develop their visual capacity to a level very close to normal. Alexander felt his legs go weak. Doctors said all the previous doctors were either wrong or deliberately lying. Why would they lie? Dr. Lucia showed him the previous reports. Because these tomography and resonance exams here clearly show that their visual cortex is functioning. Any competent ophthalmologist would see that. And why didn't they see it? That's a question they'll have to answer. Alexander stood up, trembling with rage. Doctor, do you mean that my children could have been seeing normally for years? With the correct treatment, adequate stimulation, and visual exercises, yes. They would probably have 70% to 80% of normal vision. 5 years, Alexander shouted, punching the table. 5 years lost! Samuel and Raphael were startled by their father's shout. Is Daddy mad at us? Samuel asked. No, son. Daddy is mad at the lying doctors. Dr. Lucia knelt in front of the boys. Boys, listen carefully. You did nothing wrong. The doctors just didn't do their job right. Can we get better? Raphael asked. Much better. With exercises, you'll be able to see more and more things. Can we see like other children? You'll be able to see almost like other children. And most importantly, you'll be able to play, run, go to school and have friends. The boy's eyes shone with hope. Go to school? Samuel shouted. Of course. Why couldn't you go to school? Because Dr. Albuquerque always said that blind children can't keep up in a normal school. Dr. Lucia was indignant. That doctor said that? He did, Raphael confirmed. He said we would have to be homeschooled forever. That's a lie. Children with low vision attend normal schools without any problem. Alexander was furious. Doctor, this Dr. Albuquerque convinced my children they were helpless. He didn't just convince them. From the reports I'm hearing, he systematically discouraged any development of their visual capacity. How so? By instructing them to deny visual stimuli, keeping their environment always dark, avoiding exercises that could improve their vision. Why? Because a child improves no longer needs expensive treatment. The phrase landed in the office like a bomb. Doctor, what are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that there was a financial interest in keeping your children dependent on constant medical care. Alexander clenched his fists. They used my children as a source of income. It's the only explanation for such wrong diagnoses for so long. And now what do? First, we start visual development exercises immediately. Second, we report the case to the Regional Medical Council. And how long until they recover? With dedication, in 6 months, they'll be playing like normal children. In a year, they'll be practically independent. Samuel tugged at Dr. Lucia's sleeve. "Doctor, will we be able to play soccer?" "You'll be able to play soccer. Ride a bike? Swim?" "Ride a bike," Raphael shouted with joy. "Of course, with the vision you have, you can do almost anything." The boys hugged each other, crying with happiness. "Doctor," Alexander said, "how can I thank you?" "By helping these boys recover the lost years and suing the doctors who stole their childhood." "You can be sure I'll do that." "Mr. Almeida, may I make a suggestion?" "Of course. Hire Daniela as the children's visual therapist. She has a natural instinct for it." Alexander looked at Daniela, who was playing with the boys in the corner of the office. "Daniela," he called, "do you officially accept to be responsible for Samuel and Raphael's visual development?" "I accept, but with one condition." "What's that?" "I want to study. I want to learn professional techniques to help them in the best way possible." Dr. Lucia smiled. "I can recommend excellent courses in pediatric visual stimulation." "Doctor," Alexander said, "how long have you been working with low vision in children?" 20 years. "And have you ever seen a case where the diagnosis was..." "Purposefully, Mr. Almeida. Your children's exams are crystal clear. Any first-year resident would see that they have low vision, not total blindness. So all the previous doctors, all of them knew the truth and chose to lie." Alexander stood up, determined. "Doctor, I need the names of all the doctors who signed false reports. Dr. Roberto Albuquerque, Dr. Martinez, Dr. Fernanda Silva, Dr. Santos, Dr. Carvalho, and Dr. Ribeiro. 6 doctors who turned your children into a permanent source of income. And how many other families might be going through the same thing? By the pattern of the scheme, probably dozens." Alexander memorized each name. Every doctor who had stolen precious years from his children's lives was going to pay dearly for it. "Boys," Dr. Lucia called Samuel and Raphael, "do you want to do one last test?" "We do." She took the 2 of them to the office window, which overlooked a park. "What can you see out there?" "Green trees," Samuel said, animated. "Kids playing," Raphael completed, "and cars moving in the street." The 2 spoke together. "Perfect. You can see all that because you have eyes that work. You just need exercises to see better and better." Alexander watched his sons with emotion. A week before, they lived like prisoners. Now, they were discovering they could see the world. "Doctor," he said, "how can I thank you for giving us hope back? By helping these children live the childhood they deserve, and by exposing the doctors who almost destroyed their lives." They left the hospital with a mixture of relief and determination. In the car, Samuel asked a question that touched Alexander. "Daddy, now that we can see, are you going to like us more?" Alexander pulled over to the side of the road and turned to his sons. "Sons, listen carefully. Daddy has always loved you the same way. If you were blind, if you saw perfectly, if you were different in any way, Daddy's love would always be the same." "Really?" Raphael asked. "Really? And now we're going to make sure you get back everything you lost." Daniela watched the scene, emotional. In 2 weeks, she had witnessed the complete transformation of a family destroyed by medical lies. "Mr. Almeida," she said softly, "can I say something?" "You always can. Seeing you with your sons now, seeing how much you love them, reminds me why I chose to work with families." Alexander looked at her with attention. "Why did you choose?" "Because I believe every child deserves to be loved and cared for properly. And every family deserves the chance to be happy. And you gave us that chance. We gave ourselves that chance. I just showed you the way." That afternoon, they arrived home with a completely new energy. Samuel and Raphael ran to the garden, amazed by every detail they could perceive in the sunlight. "Daniela!" Samuel shouted. "Come and see how colorful the flowers are." "And the little birds," Raphael completed. "They fly so fast." Alexander stood on the porch, watching his sons play freely for the first time in years, and watching Daniela care for them with an affection that went far beyond professional duties. "Marina," he called his sister, "I need to tell you something." "What?" "I think I'm falling in love with Daniela." Marina smiled. "It's about time, Alexander. She saved this family. But I don't want her to think it's out of gratitude. It's not gratitude. It's because she's an incredible woman who loves your children. And what if she doesn't feel the same? There's only one way to find out." Alexander looked again at Daniela, playing with Samuel and Raphael in the garden. She had given not only partial sight back to his children, but also happiness to the entire family. And for the first time in years, Alexander felt he had a complete family again. 6 months later, Alexander was on the porch of the mansion, watching Samuel and Raphael play in the garden with other children from the neighborhood. The boys were running, playing soccer, and laughing loudly, wearing their special low-vision glasses naturally. "Daddy!" Samuel shouted. "Look at the beautiful goal I scored." "I saw it, son. Perfect." Raphael came running too. "Daddy, Lucas said he's going to bring his bike tomorrow so I can learn to ride." "That's great. You see, you can do everything other kids can." Daniela approached, bringing juice for the children. In recent months, she had specialized in pediatric visual therapy and had officially become responsible for the boys' development. "How was the therapy session today?" Alexander asked. "Incredible. They managed to read their first words in large letters. Samuel read ball and Raphael read house. Dr. Lucia said their progress is above average." Alexander smiled, emotional. "And the school? Have they decided if they'll accept them?" "They have. Santa Maria School said they were impressed with their development. They'll start in the normal class in March. Normal class with some simple adaptations. A seat in the front, materials with larger letters, more time. For some activities." Samuel ran to them. "Daddy, is it true we're going to study with other kids?" "It's true, son. And we'll be able to keep up. You'll be able to do everything. You're smart, brave, and now you're seeing better and better." Raphael joined the group. "Daniela, thank you for teaching us to see." "You always could see, my loves. I just taught you to believe in it." That night, after the boys were asleep, Alexander and Daniela stayed in the living room talking about the day's progress. "Daniela," he said, "can I tell you something? You always can. In the last few months, watching you take care of my sons, seeing your dedication, your affection, I've fallen in love." Daniela smiled, blushing. "Alexander, I feel something special for you too." "Really? How could I not? You're an incredible father who fought for your sons when you discovered the truth. And you're the woman who saved my family." Alexander approached and took her hand. "Daniela, do you want to build a life with us? Be a mother to Samuel and Raphael officially?" "Alexander, are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." "Then yes, I want to be their mother very much." A year later, Alexander and Daniela got married in a simple ceremony in the mansion's garden. Samuel and Raphael were the pages, walking perfectly on the grass, without stumbling, guiding the godparents to the improvised altar. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the justice of the peace said. When Alexander kissed Daniela, Samuel shouted, "Now Daniela is our real mother." "She always was," Alexander replied, hugging his complete family. 2 years after the discovery, they had founded the Almeida Institute for Visual Development, an organization that offered free diagnoses for families with children with visual impairment. "Alexandre," Daniela said one morning, entering the Institute's office, "another desperate family has arrived." "What's the story this time?" A 6-year-old girl, diagnosed with total blindness since she was a baby. The parents spent $2 million on treatments. The child hasn't improved at all. The symptoms are identical. The child is afraid to leave her room. The parents are desperate. And the doctors are charging a fortune with no results. Alexander shook his head. How many families have we already helped this year? 120. And in 90% of the cases, we found that the diagnosis was exaggerated or completely wrong. 90%. Alexander, the scheme we discovered wasn't isolated. It was systematic. Dozens of doctors in several cities using the same strategy. The office door opened, and Samuel entered, now 12 years old, carrying a school backpack. "Dad, Mom, Daniela, the test results are in." "What results?" Alexander asked. "The essay contest results about overcoming adversity. I won first place in the school." "We're so proud," Daniela exclaimed, hugging her son. "What did you write about?" "About our story. About how a brave housekeeper saved two boys who thought they were blind." Raphael ran in after his brother. "And I won first place in math." "The two first places in the same day," Alexander said proudly. "Dad," Raphael said, "the teacher wants to invite you to give a lecture at school about overcoming adversity and family." "A lecture about what?" "About how you didn't give up on us and about how family love can overcome any obstacle." Daniela was moved. "Of course, we'll give the lecture." "And can we talk about the institute too?" Samuel asked. "You can. Maybe some parent in the audience needs to know that there is hope when doctors say there isn't." That afternoon, Alexander was reviewing the institute's reports when his lawyer, Dr. Mendez, called. "Alexandre, I have news about the arrested doctor." "What news?" "Dr. Albuquerque and the others finally confessed to everything. The scheme was even bigger than we imagined. 143 families were being deceived. The total loss reached 400 million reais. 400 million, and it wasn't just pediatric blindness. They did the same thing with autism, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, any disability that would generate permanent medical dependence. Alexander felt nausea. How many children were harmed? Over 300 children had their development delayed or blocked by purposefully exaggerated diagnosis. My God! The good news is that all the families will receive multi-million dollars, and the doctors will be in prison for decades. And the children, are they going to recover? Most of them are already recovering. Your institute has become a national reference. Families from all over the country are seeking your help. When Alexander hung up, Daniela entered the office. Who was it? Dr. Mendez. The doctor's scheme was even bigger. Over 300 children harmed. Daniela sat down heavily. 300 families who went through what we went through, who now have hope because of the institute we created, because of the courage you had to question the doctors, and your wisdom to see what they couldn't see. Samuel and Raphael ran into the office. "Dad, Mom, Daniela," Samuel said excited. "The school principal wants us to tell our story to the high school students, to inspire other young people to never give up on their dream." Raphael completed. "And do you want to tell the story?" "We do, because our story proves that there is always hope, even when everyone says there isn't, and that sometimes the simplest people are the ones who make the biggest differences," Samuel added, looking at Daniela with affection. Daniela was moved. "You two are going to inspire so many young people." "We're going to inspire them because you inspired us first," Raphael said. "You taught us that family is about fighting together, not about giving up separate." 5 years later, Samuel and Raphael were graduating from high school as the top students in their class. At the graduation ceremony, they were invited to give the farewell speech. "Classmates," Samuel began at the microphone, "our story started out difficult. For 5 years, we believed we were completely blind. We lived in fear, without hope, thinking we would never be normal." Raphael continued, "Until a special woman entered our house. She wasn't a doctor, she wasn't a specialist. She was just a housekeeper with a huge heart. She taught us that it doesn't matter what others say about us. What matters is what we believe about ourselves." Samuel returned to the microphone. Today we can see almost everything. We study, we play sports, we have friends, we have dreams, and our biggest dream is to become lawyers to help other children who are going through what we went through, so that no family loses precious years believing in lies, so that every child has the chance to discover their true potential. The audience was emotional. Alexander and Daniela cried with pride. We want to thank our father, who never gave up looking for answers, and our mother Daniela, who taught us that everyone deserves a chance to shine. And we want to tell all the young people here, no matter what obstacles you face, there is always a way to overcome them. There is always someone willing to help. There is always hope. The audience gave a standing ovation. Alexander hugged Daniela, emotional. They've grown up so well, she whispered. They grew up because they had a mother who believed in them from the first day, and a father who was brave enough to question authority. Almost 2 decades after the initial discovery, Samuel and Raphael graduated in law from USP, specializing in the rights of people with disabilities. Their first case as lawyers was to represent a family whose autistic son was being kept with an exaggerated diagnosis by greedy doctors. History repeats itself, Samuel said to Raphael during the trial. But now we know how to stop it, Raphael replied. The case gained national attention. During the trial, when asked about their motivation to defend vulnerable families, the 2 brothers always told the same story. It all started when our father, desperate with diagnoses that didn't make sense, hired an ordinary housekeeper to observe our behavior. Daniela Alves didn't have a medical background, but she had something more important. She believed that 2 children deserved more than a life limited by lies. She used simple methods, flashlights, colored paper, playing in the sun, to discover that we could partially see, and with patience and love, she helped us develop that vision until we could see almost everything. Today, we defend families because we know that every child deserves to have their true limits tested, not accepted, based only on the word of authority. The Almeida family's story became an international example of how love, determination, and the courage to question authority can turn tragedies into victory. The Almeida Institute has already helped over 1,000 families discover incorrect diagnoses, recovering tens of millions of reais in compensation, and most importantly, giving hope back to desperate parents across the country. Alexandre, Daniela said one morning, 15 years after arriving at the mansion as a housekeeper. Do you regret that I took 5 years to question the doctors? He replied. And you? That I didn't get here sooner? Alexander hugged her. You arrived at the right time. You always arrive at the right time. Why? Because God knew that Samuel and Raphael not only needed someone to help them see the world, they needed someone to teach them that they deserved to see the world. Samuel and Raphael, now adults in their 20s, still lived near their parents. Every Friday, they would get together for a family dinner, talking about the cases they were defending and the families they were helping. Dad, Samuel said at one of those dinners, did you know we've already helped over 200 children prove their diagnoses were wrong? 200 children who were being deceived just like you were. Exactly, and they all have the same story. Doctors saying there was no hope when there was plenty of hope, Raphael added. The difference is that now these families have somewhere to turn. They have the Institute, they have you, they have our experience, and they have the certainty that it's worth fighting, Daniela completed. Mom Daniela, Samuel said, can I ask you something? You always can, my love. Do you regret leaving your old life to take care of us? Daniela smiled with tears in her eyes. Samuel, taking care of you wasn't a sacrifice. It was the greatest gift of my life. Really? But you could have had your own family. I have my own family. You are my family, chosen, built with love, and more real than anything else. Raphael stood up and hugged Daniela. We love you very much, Mom. and I love you more than anything in the world." Alexander watched the scene, emotional. His family, built not by blood but by love and a common struggle. "You know what makes me most proud of you," he said. "What?" the three asked together. "That you turned an injustice into a purpose, that you used your pain to help other people." "We learned from you, Dad," Samuel said. "You never gave up on us, and from Mom Daniela," Raphael completed. "She taught us that every child deserves to believe in themselves, and that sometimes the greatest truths are discovered by the simplest people," Daniela added. 2 years later, Samuel and Raphael entered the USP Law School with a full scholarship for academic merit. At the freshman welcome ceremony, they were invited to tell their story of overcoming adversity. "Freshmen," Samuel said to the crowded auditorium, "we want to tell you how we got here. Our story begins with a medical lie that almost destroyed our childhood." Raphael continued, "For 5 years, doctors convinced us that we were completely blind. We lived in fear, without hope, thinking we would never be useful for anything, until a 42-year-old housekeeper entered our house and did something that multimillionaire doctors didn't. She believed in us." Samuel returned to the microphone. "Daniela Alves used a simple flashlight to discover that we could see light and shadows. And with basic exercises, she helped us develop our vision until we could see almost normally. Today, we can see about 80% of what a normal person sees. We drive, we study, we play sports, and we chose to major in law because we want to defend other families who are being deceived by dishonest professionals. Our story proves that diagnoses do not define destinies, that every child deserves to have their true potential discovered, and that sometimes the biggest transformations start with the most unlikely people." Raphael concluded, "If a housekeeper with no medical background could discover in 1 week what specialists didn't discover in 5 years, imagine what you, future lawyers, can discover by questioning authority and fighting for justice." The audience exploded in applause. Alexander and Daniela in the front row cried with pride. 5 years later, Samuel and Raphael graduated as the top students in their law class. At the graduation ceremony, the USP dean made a point of mentioning their story. Samuel and Raphael Almeida represent the best of Brazilian law. Young people who turn difficult personal experiences into a life mission to help others. After graduation, they opened their own office, Almeida and Almeida Law, specializing in the rights of people with disabilities. Their first major case was suing a network of clinics that kept autistic children with exaggerated diagnoses to sell unnecessary treatment. "It's exactly what happened to us," Samuel said to Raphael while preparing the defense. "But this time, we're the ones who are going to stop the criminals," Raphael replied. The case gained international attention. Newspapers around the world reported the story of the lawyer twins who fight medical fraud because they were victims in their childhood. During the trial, when asked about their motivation, Samuel replied, "Your Honor, everything we are today started when a simple woman dared to question medical authorities. Our mother, Daniela, taught us that every child deserves to have their true potential discovered, and our father taught us that it's worth fighting against injustices, even when everyone says you're wrong," Raphael completed. "Today we use that lesson to defend other families because we believe that no child should have their dreams limited by life." The office grew quickly. In 5 years, Samuel and Raphael had already sued over 50 doctors for fraudulent diagnoses, recovered over 100 million in compensation for harmed families, and helped over 1,000 children discover their true potential. "Dad," Samuel said at a family meeting, "did you know our story has become a case study in medical school?" "A case study about what?" "About the importance of second opinions and about how financial interest can corrupt diagnoses. And in law schools too," Raphael added. "As an example of how lawyers should question authority when something doesn't make sense." Daniela smiled. and in education courses as an example of how every child has hidden potential waiting to be discovered. Alexander looked around the table. His family, which had started with two terrified children and a desperate father, was now a force for social change. "You know what impresses me the most?" he said. "What?" everyone asked. "How a simple decision, hiring a housekeeper instead of another specialized nanny, changed not only our lives, but the lives of thousands of other people. That's because sometimes God uses the most unlikely people to perform the greatest miracles," Daniela said. "And sometimes the greatest specialists are the people who studied the least, but who loved the most," Samuel completed. That night, Alexander stood on the porch, thinking about how life had changed. 20 years before, he was a desperate man, spending a fortune on lying doctors, watching his sons languish at home. Now, he was a fulfilled man, married to the woman he loved, the father of 2 brilliant lawyers who dedicated their lives to helping others. All because a 42-year-old housekeeper had the courage to question what expensive doctors wouldn't question. She had the simplicity to see what specialists didn't see. She had the love needed to believe that 2 children deserved more than a limited life. The Almeida family's story proved that sometimes the biggest transformations start with the simplest gestures, like turning on a flashlight in the dark room of 2 children and asking, "What can you see?" and discovering that the answer can change the world forever.